All right, let's get started here. I'm going to show you in this video how to log into LiveText Via, also how to create rubrics, which you can then use for your class assessments. So let me just get the annotation tool up here running so I can point out a few things. So right here in the email and password fields, you need to enter your email address, and you want to put the entire email address in here. So the @hawaii.edu also needs to be there. In the password field, you're going to be entering the password that I assigned to you earlier in this semester. So in August, from the PD Cow CC email address, I sent you guys your credentials at that time. If you've never logged into LiveText Via, the password would be the same one that I sent you at that time. If you have logged in since then, it's very likely that the LiveText Via system forced you to change that password. So you would be entering whatever that password is. So let me get myself logged in here. So I'm going to be using a fake instructor account here. So once you log in, or you successfully log in, you land in this in progress feed. And if you look along the side here, you see there is a in progress, timeline, showcase, template, and rubric. You have these various tabs along the left-hand side. Again, initially you're going to land in this in progress tab, which then shows you courses that you are that were assigned to you or you're currently teaching. Your listing may go as far back as spring 17. Some of you actually have fall 16 courses in here too, but it should be in order. Fall 17 should be at the top. So you may see fall 17 courses up here, and as you sort of scan downwards, you'll see spring 17 and possibly fall 16 courses too. Again, this is just showing you courses that were assigned to you. I think this is where a lot of people get stuck with LiveText Via. It lands here. Their innate reaction is to click on a course, which would then take them into the actual course page, which if you've never accessed the course before, there's nothing in here. The other sort of innate thing to do is to click on this create activity button here. And if you do that, and let me actually do that for you, it takes you into this assignment builder. And what this assignment builder asks you to do is to provide a title, and that you can actually do. You could actually punch in something here. And let's see if I can do that. So we'll just put in something here. So test assignment, and then when you get to this template thing, there's nothing. And if you can't choose a template, there isn't much that you're going to be able to do with this assignment. And I think this frustrates a lot of people, understandably so. So clearly this isn't the way to go about doing this. So let me get out of here. So I'm going to, you may not be able to see my mouse there. I mean, my mouse pointer, but up here on the top left-hand side is this X. So I'm going to click on that to get me out of here. And then I'm going to click on, let me just use my spotlight tool just so you know. I'm going to click on this back arrow to get me out of here. So let me do that. Okay, so now we're back at our in progress tab that shows us all the courses again that have been assigned to us. I'm going to go ahead and skip down to the bottom of this list of various tools and tabs, and I'm going to go down here to the one called Rubric. So let me go ahead and do that. If you're using Rubrics, this is where you need to start. What this page will show you is any rubrics that you've created and published for use. As you can see, I actually created one here before. So it actually shows one. Yours may be empty the first time you go in. Instead of using this one that I've already created, I'm going to do another one. So how do you go about doing that? Fairly simple, I think, right? We're going to click on this Create Rubric button here, which will then take us into a rubric builder. So let me go ahead and do that. So I'm going to click on Create Rubric. And what opens, again, is a rubric builder, or a wizard, I guess you could call it. So the wizard is going to ask you for a title. It potentially asks you to select standards up here at a top level. And be careful with this one. If you select standards at the top here, it's going to ask you to set sort of a point threshold. And what it's going to do is calculate points based on what you've entered here in these element rows, and just say students met those standards based on the overall score of the rubric. So if you are intending to do that, you could select your standards up here and then just say based on the overall score of this rubric, a student meets whatever standards. What most people typically do is select standards more individually to each row in their rubric. And that's what I'm going to show you today. So let's do that. So let me get back to my mouse pointer here. So I'm going to enter a title, and it's for this fictitious course called Links. Excuse me. Links 101. I'm going to call it Final CSLO Assessment. Then I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to make this a simple sort of binary yes/no type of rubric. So you can add more levels if you want by clicking on this add level selection here. You can also add more rows to your rubric, or what they're calling elements, by clicking on this add element button down here. In my case, I have too many levels. If I'm just going to do like a meets, doesn't meet, then I don't need this level 3. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that by clicking the X right here next to level 3. And again, you may not be able to see my mouse pointer, but next to level 3, there's a little white X in that gray circle. So I'm going to click on that to remove that extra level. It's going to ask me to confirm that I want to delete that, and I'm going to say yes. So it's gone now. So now I have to edit this rubric to make it what I want. So instead of level 1, I'm going to change this to meets. And instead of level 2, I'm going to change this to does not meet. And I'll use a simple 1-0 point scale. So if you meet, you get 1. If you don't meet, you get 0. Down here in these cells where it says no description, and let me just highlight that. So here and here, and if you had more levels, you would actually type in the description or something that explains how you're determining whether a student meets the element that you're identifying here. So, sometimes it's something like, a student meets based on a score on an exam or a project. Sometimes it's more descriptive. A student will show mastery of a skill. A student will be able to incorporate, particular skill sets or knowledge of stuff like that. And you really should have descriptions in here to help someone who is looking at this rubric later kind of understand the methodology behind how you're choosing whether a student is meeting or not meeting a standard. Okay, enough of that. Let me get back out of here. So here in this element 1, I'm going to change this. So I'm going to like sort of list my CSLOs for this course in these rows. So I'm going to call element 1 CSLO1 instead. Now, below, and let me just get my spotlight tool again. Again, we see this ability to select standards here. So I'm going to go ahead and associate or map a standard to this row of this rubric. So I'm going to click on select standards, and this new window pops open. And this is the one that allows you to align standards with your rubric. On the top over here, you see you can actually identify which set you're using. And I'm going to apologize ahead of time here because some of you already know this actually, that when you look at the way our standard sets are organized, they're not done by alphabetical order. Unfortunately, when they were imported, LiveText is listing them in the order that they were imported from LiveText C1. So you may have to do a lot of kind of scrolling through the list to find the set that you want, but just bear with it. Hopefully, they'll be building in some filtering tools later. So let me get my mouse pointer back here. So I'm going to click on that drop down, and I'm going to jump straight to this fictitious Linux 101 course, and I'm going to select that standard set. And because I'm looking at CSLO1, I'm going to check this box right here next to CSLO1. You notice that the select standards is shown. So I checked CSLO1 here, and because I've done that, now I see it here under the selected standards. So I'm now going to click on save up here. Move my box down here. So I click save, and you notice now that SLO or that CSLO has been populated into this bottom part of this first row of this rubric. So that's what we want. Now, this standard is mapped with this row in this rubric. So when we use it later, when you select an option here or here, the system will know it's mapped to this standard. Now, there's one additional thing you want to do here, and this is something unique to LiveText Via when compared to the old LiveText, is that you have the ability to select, if a standard is being met in these various levels that you create. So for example, some of you have maybe 3 levels here: exceeds, meets, doesn't meet. Now, when a student exceeds, clearly they meet that standard. If they meet the standard, they meet the standard. You can actually select that and tell the system how to report that by selecting right here next to the CSLO or the standard right here in this bottom part. You would click in this bottom box and actually select, and you can't see a box or anything. What happens is your mouse pointer turns into a little finger icon, and you're over the little box there. And when you left click it, you see that this check mark appears and it says met. Now, I could do this across all of the levels of assessment that I have here, but clearly it wouldn't make sense, right? Since this row here says a student doesn't meet the standard, there's no way that I should select met down here. So let me go ahead and change that. So I'm going to unselect that by just hovering over that checkbox and left clicking again. And you notice now that that met goes away. Now, why would you want to do this? People ask, well, wouldn't you be able to tell if a student met the standard or not by looking at the the descriptors up here? Meets means a meet. Doesn't meet means they didn't meet that standard, which is true. When you run reports, you will be able to see how many students actually got a meets versus got a does not meet. However, if you again had multiple levels, say exceeds, meets, doesn't meet, you want to be able to show the system could easily determine right over here by saying whenever you check in that box, a student met that standard. So you could run an overall report that shows how many students met that standard. It's good to have these descriptions up here also because you can also run reports that show how many students exceeded versus how many just met versus how many students didn't meet. So it's a good idea to incorporate descriptions up here and also to select down here what constitutes a meet and what does not. This is very useful too in, say, a formative assessment where you may have, again, multiple levels, say exceeds, meets, developing, does not meet. Maybe initially a developing student should meet that standard. So maybe you would select met at that point. If you use the same assessment, say on the tail end of a class, and you're trying to show that the student is now at the end of the semester and they have now mastered that standard, maybe you're going to unselect met at the developing level, right? So this is a useful tool to have. So I strongly encourage you to use it in your rubrics. Okay, enough of that. Let me go ahead and add a few more levels to this rubric. So I'm going to create one for CSLO2. And you noticed one thing about the points carried over. So because I had a 1 and 0 point scale, you notice when I added the new row, the 1 and 0 automatically populates. So if you're using a point scale, you should set it up in your first element row before you start adding others. Okay, so let me go ahead and map the CSLO number 2 here. So I'm going to click on select standard, go to my standard set, select CSLO2. Again, we see it here under select standards. I'm going to click on save. And now we see it again. Just highlight it again for you. So now we see CSLO2 is here. I do want to again select this checkbox here to indicate a meets. So let me do that. Okay, so now we have those two. And I'm going to stop here because I think you guys would get the idea, right? So let me now save this. So I'm going to go up here and you notice you have the option. Let me get my highlighter tool again. You have several options: export to PDF, save, and publish. So first one, pretty self-explanatory. You could actually export this rubric that you just built out into a PDF file, which you could print and sort of look at as a hard copy. You also have this option to save and the option to publish. If you're 100% sure that this rubric is set up correctly and it's ready to go, you could skip saving and go straight to publish. If you're unsure about that, you would just click save. You would click save. What it does is it saves it. You go back to your listing of rubrics and you would see it indicated as a draft. And let me do it that way so you can kind of get a sense of what that looks like. So I'm going to click save. So now we see that rubric that we built, Links 101 Final CSLO Assessment. And because I saved it, it's called draft here. Once you're set, now what this allows you to do is if you ever wanted to, you click on the title area of the rubric. So let me get my spotlight tool again. So if you clicked on anywhere in here, it would take you back to that rubric builder where you could start editing that rubric further. If you are fairly confident at this point that you want to publish it, actually I think publish, you would do the same. You would click on it. Yeah. So you click on the title, it would take you back to the rubric builder, so you could potentially edit anything you wanted to do here. But if you're ready to publish it, we're going to go up here to the top right and just say publish. So now you notice that our listing shows now that this rubric has been published. So now that the rubric's been published, now we can use it for assignments or future assessments that we're going to be using in our courses. And there's an additional step here, and I'm going to be covering it in the next video. So why don't we take a break? So that's how you build a rubric in LiveText Via with map standards and indicators of what constitutes a meet versus a doesn't meet. So let's stop there. The next video will show you actually how to incorporate a rubric into a template. All right, thank you for watching.